Hello everyone. We're going to do notes a little bit differently since I'm gone today. These assignments and these notes in this presentation are all due on Monday, May 1st. You will not have time on Monday to work on these in class. They are due at the beginning of class on Monday. All right, you need your notes out. It will say Day 4, Types of Evolution. Just like we normally do in class, you do need your highlighter or a pen, pencil, marker, something to make notes on and highlight the most important information as well as the information that you will see on the test. If you need to, pause it now, get ready, and then push play when you are all ready to go. Alright, so for the first one, we have types of evolution. Highlight the items that are yellow, and then there's some things that I would like you to write in as well, and I will let you know what those are. So the first type of evolution that we're talking about is convergent evolution. This is the process by which different species evolve similar traits. We get the picture here. So we've talked about sugar gliders and flying squirrels already when we discussed biogeography. You can see that the sugar glider is from Australia, the flying squirrel is from North America, and we've discussed in class already that even though they both glide from tree to tree with that flap of skin between their arm and legs, they are not very closely related. They do not share a common ancestor. The reason why they look so similar is because they live in similar types of environments. So this type of evolution, convergent evolution, occurs in different species, and they look similar even though they have a different ancestor. Okay, the next one is divergent evolution. So this is a process in which descendants of a single ancestor diversify into several different species that fit a variety of habitats. So I feel like this is what we've been really focusing on in class. A lot of our labs are focused on divergent evolution, how we start with one ancestor, and then through the process of natural selection, the random mutations, such as beak shape, if we're looking at the picture here with Darwin's finches, great example of this. The random mutations could cause the leaves bird the beak to be slightly pointed as opposed to the fruit beak, the very broad, big, strong beak over here to the right. That would be caused by random mutations. They're filling the habitat, and they're more adapted to eating one type of food source compared to the other. And so through natural selection, because they can do a better job eating, just like we did in the lab, the bird beak lab, they're going to reproduce more often, and that adaptation, that trait that helps them survive, will be amplified and passed on to their offspring. All right, the third one goes right along with divergent evolution. Highlight adaptive radiation. And I always think of the sun, like the sun radiates down, especially if you look at the fish picture here, it kind of looks like the sun. So you start with the center. At the center would be the common ancestor, and all of the new species that have adapted to their particular space in the habitat have radiated out from that common ancestor. So this is just a little bit different than divergent evolution in the way that divergent evolution diversifies, or one common ancestor gets different, but adaptive radiation is like that, on steroids. So if you look at all of the fish, there's a whole lot going on there. So the big things that I want you to highlight here is that it's a new population in a new environment. It's still going through divergent evolution, but now it's on steroids. So now it fills many parts of the environment. Look at these Hawaiian honey creepers. That's the bird picture that's shown here. These Hawaiian honey creepers are so many different types because they're filling just about every part of the habitat on the Hawaiian Islands. Okay, so this is the fourth vocabulary term, but really the third idea of co-evolution. So if you have a co-partner or a co-pilot, you're doing something together with that other person. Same with co-evolution. This is when two or more species have evolved adaptations due to each other's influence. So if we look at the picture to the right with the zebra and the lion, the zebra, if it's going to survive, needs to be fast. That is its adaptation. Well, the lion, on the other hand, it wants to eat, and so it needs to be fast as well. So speed, in this case, is the adaptation, and they have co-evolved. One became fast to catch the other, or you could say the zebra became fast to escape its predator. So predation selection is very common with co-evolution. And it's one of the videos that you'll watch later on in the presentation. And there's questions to go along with that. The other picture, if you look at the bird with the flower, you can see how the flower shape is just about the same as the bird's really arched beak. That is a very, very specific beak shape. And so that bird really does well with that type of flower. The downside to this is if, in this particular case, if the pink flower goes away or if it changes, the bird has two options. It can change with it, or it can... Okay, and here is our... No, never mind. It's not our last slide. Here's another example of coevolution. So we have pollinators. This is very common if you look at the bee picture. The bee's back is being dusted with the pollen of this flower because of the shape of those flower parts. I don't know if they're pistils or stamens. I get them confused. But you can see how they really match the bee's abdomen shape. You can see the hummingbird, and its length of beak is directly proportional, and it matches the length of that flower and the petals there, and then also the bat. So the bat is a pollinator in this case. Not all bats are carnivores. This is an herbivorous bat, and it is going to drink the nectar of this flower. The flower has, over millions of years, turned up its petals so that the bat can get to the nectar, but in addition to that, it's going to be dusted with the pollen. So when it goes to another flower, it's cross-pollinating. So it helps the bat because the bat has really easy access to food. The flower, in this case, the species, the population, gets cross-pollination, which increases genetic diversity, and we know that genetic diversity helps a stable population and a stable ecosystem as well. All right, so here we have the steps of speciation of Darwin's finches. So we're kind of going back a ways. Please highlight the yellow part. If you've not been doing that, go back and fix that for the past slides. Notice that I have ancestors written in orange. Please add that to number 1. I think that will be more meaningful to you than founding mothers and fathers. So the first step in the speciation of Darwin's finches, and this can really be applied to many different species, not just Darwin's finches on the Galapagos Islands. So first we have to start with an ancestor. That DNA needs to come from somewhere. And the finches, in this case, made their way from South America. That's where the ancestors came from. Write that in. The second step is the separation of populations. So the finches crossed to different islands. The third step, there were changes in the gene pool. Over time, populations adapted to the needs of their environment, and because they're on different islands, those environments are slightly different as well. So the changes in the gene pool will be different according to the different islands. Number 4 says reproductive isolation. Highlight that because it's in yellow. The birds prefer to mate with birds that have the same beak as they do. So now we have, once again, reproductive isolation, and this is causing 2 species to evolve. Because remember, what defines a species? There are 2 requirements. They need to be able to mate, and they need to look similar. So by this step, number 4, they look different because they have different beaks according to the different islands and the different food sources. And they're mating with their like birds. So they're not going to mate with a bird that's more adapted to eating fruit if they're an insect eater. The beak shape looks so different now that they do not recognize the other as part of their species, as even a mating option. So this would be a prezygotic speciation, because it's before the zygote forms if they're not mating. And then number 5, if they do share the same island, they have some options, and highlight these. They can coexist, which means they cannot do exactly the same thing in exactly the same way at exactly the same time, because there's going to be too much competition. One species will compete the other. One species will naturally be more fit. So they can learn to coexist, which means they do something different in some way. Maybe they eat morning, the other one eats in the evening. Maybe one eats fruit, the other one eats insects. Okay, they can't overlap. The other option is, of course, extinction, or there could be further evolution, so they can adapt to their environment, so there's less competition overall. All right, this is the last slide before we get to the assignment to-do list. So this is a summary, just going through all the way back to DNA. So starting at the top and working our way down, we have DNA, and we have random mutations. You might want to write that in. I'm not going to go back now because it's a process to do that as I'm recording this, I've learned. So the mutations are random. Write that right next to it. And those random mutations cause changes in the genotype. And not always, but sometimes if we have a change in genotype, we will also have a change in the phenotype. That change in phenotype may cause, not always, but may cause variability in populations. And those, if they help them survive, then we can call that trait an adaptation. Okay. Let's see what it says here. It's really small. The fittest individuals pass on their genes. And then we have selective pressures. So changes in the allele frequency in the gene pool. So the most fit organisms or individuals will reproduce and pass those genes on to the next generation. That's changing the allele frequency in the gene pool. After many generations, and even more selective pressures, we have new species, which means that the old species, or the two separate species rather, will not mate, and they now look different. All right? So then you have two options. You can go off to the left, and that says continued success in the environment. They will continue to evolve. Or you can go to the right, and if they are overwhelmed by environmental pressures, they can go extinct, so they die. That's sad for them. So that's the overview. Here are your assignments, and I made it as a to-do list for you so you can check them off. So what I need you to do is, on the next slide, there are 2 video clips. On the following slide, after that, you'll see the questions that I would like you to answer. So get a lined piece of paper. First, copy down the questions. It's going to take you a while, but that's all right. You have until Monday. So copy the questions, leave some space so you can write the answer as you're watching the video. Answer those questions. Those are due on Monday. All in all, the video clips altogether are about 12, 13 minutes or so, just so you can plan out your video clips. The next thing I need you to do is to work on notes review number 14. By this point, because we've reviewed 1 through 13 in class, on Monday when you turn it in, it should be complete, and that's what I'll be looking for. So we will review that, number 14. I'm going to stamp that when you walk in on Monday as well. But we are turning that in for a final grade. And then the last thing on the list is, if you've done all that stuff and it's Friday, work on your study guide. The substitute, if you're in class on Friday, should have given you the study guide. If you are testing on Friday, then get the study guide online on Google Classroom. I'll attach it as well. Otherwise, just get it on Monday. However, that doesn't leave you much time. So if you want it earlier, then you can always come in class and I'll have that printed for you. Okay, so let me show you the video clips. Here are the video clips. And here are the questions. So these are the ones that you get to copy down. I know it looks like a lot. It's because it is a lot. So here is the second video clip, and those are going to be turned in on a separate sheet of paper on Monday, along with your notes review, and then you can work on your study guide. Okay, have a great weekend. Thank you for sticking in with me. It's 18 minutes, and I am out. Have a great weekend.